Welcome to The Path. This podcast is a production of the men's ministry of First Baptist Church in Hendersonville, Tennessee.
Welcome back to the Path Podcast. I'm Jeff Tarkington. Today we have a special guest. Unfortunately, Foster's not here past couple episodes, and it's nothing really going on other than the scheduling conflicts. So I don't want anybody listening to think that Foster's not coming back or anything, because he's definitely coming back. We're both in busy times of our lives and trying to schedule everything, keep us here. It's really hard with what we both have going on with our families and work and everything. Our guest today has been in the music industry for a very long time, part of a band that is known all over the world. Originally was probably, I guess, known as Wally Fowler and the Georgia Clodhoppers,
right?
But they changed their name later on, and that band is the Oak Ridge Boys, and we have Duane Allen, who is the lead singer of the Oak Ridge Boys, here with us today. I'm excited about this opportunity to get to talk to him and his life in music, his life raising a family while being part of the music industry, and also doing that while maintaining his faith as a Christian. So welcome to the show.
Good to be with you, Jeff. And we miss our buddy today. He's out, but he'll be back, I'm sure, on the next show.
Oh, yeah.
And this just gives us more chance for me and you to talk.
I talked to him before we started recording, and he is repairing fencing on his farm. So I'd much rather be sitting here talking than fixing fences.
Well, with the weather that we've had, and we probably still have more coming, because at this time of the year we have some pretty strong winds that come up right through Tornado Alley right here where we live.
So in my notes, I have you became a member of the Oak Ridge Boys in 1966. Is that correct?
That's right.
So, a lot of the people listening might not have been alive in 1966. I wasn't. I'm almost 48 years old now, but have known of the Oak Ridge Boys. I can't remember not knowing about the Oak Ridge Boys. I believe my parents in the record player they have still have one of y'all's records there. I did not bring it like Bruce Chesser brought when we had our gospel in the Ville to have you sign.
Wasn't that cool?
That was. But this for people to get to know you. Can you tell us about your early life, where you grew up, what your family life was like?
Well, I grew up on a farm and ranch, a small one. It wasn't one of those big ranches like you see on television or you see in the movies. It was a small farm and ranch, but it was a family farm. And we grew everything that we ate, either in the garden or on the meadows or in the pastures. We grew our own cattle, and we had chickens, and we had pigs, and we had peacocks, we had horses, and we had a huge garden. And Mom and Dad would let me raise the watermelons, and from that, I bought my school clothes. And we were actually very much a farm family. And if the crops did good, we did good. If the crops didn't do so good, Daddy would just go to the bank and get money for the next year. And maybe next year it would be a bumper crop. And so he would pay all the loans off for the feed and everything that he ordered for the year. And we'd go for the next year.
Was this in Texas?
This was in Texas. I was raised about 16 miles southeast of Paris, Texas. It's in northeast Texas. And my family was rich in love. We didn't have a lot of money, but we were rich in love. And Daddy was a very spiritual man. He didn't force it on you, but he was the kind of man that believed that the greatest blessing he had from God was to be able to have a farm and to be able to work the soil and raise his family from the dirt of the ground and worship God and be able to go to school, a school of his choice, and live in a community and teach his kids about God. And he taught us all about music. I learned to read shape note music from my mom and dad before I ever went to college and learned classical music. But I learned shape note music from my mom and dad as an early kid. I was the youngest of 6. So when my mom and dad would have a big gathering on Christmas or Easter or Thanksgiving or Mother's Day, my older brothers and sisters would come back home. We'd all gather around the piano before they would leave. And with mom and dad joining in, we had enough in our family for a double quartet. That's where I learned my love for singing harmony. I learned my love for living in harmony from the Oak Ridge Boys. That's in real life. Living in harmony is much more important than singing in harmony.
Yeah. Can you remember, as music is such an important part of your life, can you remember a time where the music wasn't involved in life, growing up in a family where that was an important thing?
I really can't because of my surroundings. All my brothers and sisters were musically inclined. A brother just over me, about 6 years older than me, was a musical missionary, and I followed him through Paris Junior College and then went to East Texas State University, which now is East Texas A&M at Commerce. And I followed him through all of those colleges. He followed a sister older than him through the same colleges. We all studied from the same teachers. And my oldest sister wanted to be a school teacher, so she graduated there and wound up teaching school and teaching music in school. My brother, just older than me, wanted to be a missionary. And so he wound up spending 28 years with the Southern Baptist Convention in Zambia. And he went out into the outback and crossed over the Zambezi River up into a place where he went and stayed a week and helped them form what was a local church. And when he came back, the last tires that had gone through that little village were his.
Oh, wow.
So it was that far in the outback.
Yeah.
And he helped them, he taught them how to build a church, and he taught them, we taught each other music studies. I taught him how to do copyrights over the phone, and when he would come home, then we would headbang each other and study music copyright law, because I had built some publishing companies here, and I knew what foreign copyright law and what was different than what copyright law is here. And he said, we've got many chants and things around here that people in Zambia, they sing these chants, but none of it is written down. So he wrote all of it down, copyrighted it all, and then as his missionary gift, he gave to the Zambian people their own copyrighted works. He bound it all up and gave it to them as his missionary gift.
Wow, that's amazing. As you're growing up in Texas, and actually my dad went to East Texas and got his master's degree from there while he was in the Air Force.
Oh, man.
So before it was Texas A&M Commerce, so it was still East Texas. And
right.
So that was in, I guess, the 80s, probably early to mid-80s when he got that. So going to high school and everything, what were you involved in then? Were you involved in music in high school, or did you do sports? Did you do multiple things?
Our school was so small, we didn't have enough people in our classes in all of high school for a football team. We didn't have enough in our class for a credited baseball team. We just had enough for a basketball team and volleyball. And we did run track, and I did all the above. We had a championship basketball team the last year I was in high school. We only lost one game, and that was to the worst team in the county. And it was the last game of the year. We still went to regionals. and we were still the champions in the county, but we did lose one game, which kind of messed up a perfect season.
Yeah.
But we had a wonderful time. And my music teacher was my uncle, and he was kind of a hero of mine. And he also taught us English. He was very strict on me, and he knew what my goals were, but he made me work. He made me work really hard. So he didn't cut me any slack. In fact, I probably had to do things more strictly than other people did because I was his nephew. And he formerly played the piano for the Blackwood Brothers Quartet when they lived in Shenandoah, Iowa, many years ago. And their piano player had a wreck and was out for a while, so my uncle was called, and he played piano for the Blackwood Brothers for 2 or 3 years. And then when the other piano player came back, for a while they had double pianos on the stage. I have some of those photographs.
Wow.
So he knew what traveling with a quartet was all about. And I remember when I was 6 years old, I was down in the cotton fields, and my mother used to tell people that she could hear me singing all the way down in the cotton fields, and our house sat high on a hill, and we would be down in the bottom, either hoeing or picking cotton or pulling bowls, so to speak. And I would be singing. If I was by myself, I sang, and she could hear me all the way up to the top. There were also times that at 6 years old, before I even became a Christian, I would pray that one day I would get to sing in a 4-part harmony group. And I would just wonder why they wouldn't call me. We didn't even have a phone. But I knew all their songs. I would go, when we would turn in at night, I'd try to find a radio station that would play gospel music, and I would listen to all of their songs. I also like country music, and I love the Sons of the Pioneers. I learned all of their songs. I've got everything they've ever recorded, all the way back to 35. I was a fan of the Everly Brothers. I loved all of the groups in country and gospel music that harmonized. I love the Philadelphia groups. I loved the Detroit groups, the Temptations, those groups that sang in harmony. I loved that. Now, that didn't happen when I was a kid, but it happened later on. I've always loved harmony singing. There's something about putting those voices together, and when they are in tune, near perfection, you can hear the overtones up above, and it fills up a room. It just almost shakes a room when your harmony is good.
Yeah.
That's something that I felt in my soul when I was a kid, because I heard it from my family. And family groups have something in common in that the timbre in their voice is very similar. So your vibrato and a lot of the quality in your voice comes with the family genes. So when families sing together, sometimes that harmony gets to the quick spot a little faster, and you hear that magic, and that's the magic that I always wanted to be a part of.
And you're coming up and you're going through high school and then college, and the 60s are really kind of hidden in that time frame. Did any of the music from that time frame, I know you said you liked country music, you had gospel music and stuff, but I think of the 60s, I think of like CCR and some stuff. Was any of that influential to you?
I remember walking down the street and hearing from the Baptist Student Union was right next to a place that people hung out and drank soft drinks and just came to get a sandwich. And they had loudspeakers out on the street. And the streets were shaking just about it. I was walking toward that. And the reason I said the Baptist Student Union is because I usually went in there and played table tennis with, there's only one guy I couldn't beat. He beat me every time, and he would laugh at me. So I passed by it that day, and I went to that place next door to get something to drink and a sandwich. And there was a new group blasting out of the speakers with "It's Been a Hard Day's Night." And that was my introduction to the Beatles. And I thought they were really something else.
They definitely had a couple hits.
Yeah, I wasn't an early fan of theirs, but I became one when the music, with its simplicity, took the world by storm. I also became a very avid fan, and then ultimately got to meet Barry Gibb with the Bee Gees. And he's such a fine man, a wonderful man, and we thought he was going to be a part of our community for a while.
Came close.
Yeah. And I got to meet him and to thank him for all the good music that he and his brothers gave to us. And I've always loved that harmony that they did, which was completely different coming from England than the Beatles.
Yeah.
So a different entry there. But I've loved all kind of harmonies from the early days of the Blackwood Brothers, the Statesmen, the Spear Family, and the Oak Ridge Quartet. I was a fan of the Oak Ridge Boys before I ever became a member, and I collected their records. I can recall in library where I was supposed to be listening to Mozart or Beethoven or one of the classical greats, and I would have their album cover on the desktop there. And then I'd have the turntable in front of me, and I would be listening to the Oak Ridge Boys or the Couriers, but I would have a Mozart cover over there. And I remember my violin teacher, he was a guy who would come by and check on you and see what you were listening to. He would come to my desk and see Mozart. "Oh, Mr. Allen, Mozart, a genius." And he would just pass on by, and I would be listening to the Oak Ridge Boys or the Couriers or someone else in gospel music because I'd already listened to what I was supposed to listen to. This was my time now, and I was listening to something that I wanted to listen to.
While you're in college, are you majoring in music?
Yes, I have a degree in classical music, voice, piano, and composition.
And you're in a fraternity also, is that right?
I'm in Delta Tau Delta social fraternity.
So what was college life? What was your college life like?
Well, I worked my way through college because my parents, I mentioned before, we were rich in love, but we didn't have a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I didn't receive but $100 from my parents to go through college. And that's when my uncle got killed, the same one I mentioned earlier, in a car train wreck, and that's what my mother received. She gave me all of it, and I bought some clothes for college. But I worked, and when I got to East Texas, I was working. I had a radio show in Paris on KPLT. I had an hour a day on Monday through Saturday and 45 minutes on Sunday morning. When I would go to college on Monday through Friday, then I would come back to Paris and I would go service all of my accounts, see what they wanted on their ad for the coming week. I would collect money from them. Then I would go around to all of the sponsors. Then I would go back out to the radio station in a room about like this with a recorder in it. And I would record radio shows that would be for next week for 6 hours and 45 minutes. Sometimes after I'd collected money and all of the things that the sponsors wanted me to talk about for the coming week, I might be there until 12 or 1 o'clock in the morning before I finished. But then I would go either back to Commerce or I would get in a car and go somewhere and sing with a group called the Southern Airs out of Paris, Texas. I usually had at least 2, sometimes 3 jobs. I was also a checkout person at the library where people came in to listen, and I would check them out the record they would want to listen because I had to work my way through school. I didn't have my parents didn't have the finances to be able to help just pay those notes. I had to work for them.
How far away from your home was school?
About 35 miles.
So were you living in Commerce, or did you stay at home?
I lived on campus.
Okay.
I lived on campus from the day that I graduated, even in Parish Junior College, which was 16 miles away. I moved in to Paris because I had a job at Paris selling shoes. So I would go to school in the morning, and then I would head to the Belk's department store in the basement and sell shoes until they closed. And so I worked my way through there too. Now, I did have scholarships, but they didn't pay everything.
Right.
So I had to come up with the rest of it. And I had a valedictorian scholarship. I had the first vocal scholarship ever given at Paris Junior College. And I had a scholarship for most likely to succeed. And those 3 scholarships helped pay my way through Paris Junior College. And I worked at Belk's department store. And the last year I worked at Levine's department store selling shoes. I also sang with the Southern Airs Quartet during that period of time as well. That would usually be on Sunday. And we had radio shows that we did. We made a little bit from there, I think $5 a week.
Was you decided to go to East Texas, was that geographical the reason that you went there? Because like I said, my dad went there and got his master's there. My brother went to University of North Texas, and that's been known more as an arts and has a big music program there. What was the music program like at East Texas?
East Texas is noted for its vocal department. North Texas is noted for its band department.
Right.
And the head of the music department was Dr. James S. Richards. And after I left East Texas A&M at Commerce, Dr. Richards actually was encouraged to go to North Texas State to start building their vocal department. And he worked in both colleges, but he was a genius. He was really smart. In fact, when I went to East Texas at Commerce, I had a meeting with him, and he asked why I had not studied music at Paris Junior College. And I said, well, most music that is offered is classical. And both my brother and my sister both graduated from, one of them went to Paris Junior College, and my sister just went to East Texas for 4 years. They both got what they wanted. One wanted to be a school teacher, one wanted to be a music missionary. I don't want to be either. I'd like to go to a field of music or musics like country or gospel that is more simple, but I'd like to make it better. And I'd like to know what I'm doing. I'd like to be able to hear a simple song with a guitar accompaniment, but in my head, I would like to be able to hear how to write a symphony with that. And that's the type of training that I went for, and that's what I got. So he put me with people that would direct me in those areas. East Texas is so well known for their vocal department. It was kind of like a hub for the people from the Metropolitan Opera. I got to study with the first tenor, who was the lead tenor for the Metropolitan Opera, because he came there to get his doctorate. Well, he graduated after I'd got there the first year. I got to study with him a year. And when he left the Metropolitan Opera, his understudy, William Abbott, became the top tenor. When R.G. Webb left East Texas and went to the London Philharmonic Orchestra to become their top tenor, William Abbott followed him to East Texas to finish his doctorate. So I got to study with both of them, as well as the old doctor of vocal actually, he taught me the vocal fundamentals, how to breathe. Like if you want to learn how to breathe, put a newborn baby on his back and watch how he breathes. His tummy will come up. He hasn't learned bad habits yet. He'll breathe deeply in his diaphragm. That's where your diaphragm is. If you've had music lessons before, their teachers always say, breathe through your nose. It goes directly to your diaphragm. Well, a baby hasn't learned bad habits before and learned to breathe from right here up. Well, that's a short breath, but you'll wear your vocal cords out. You breathe through your nose and you blow out through your mouth. And that's the way you save your voice.
Hearing this is just it's hard for me to wrap my mind around because I have no musical ability whatsoever.
That's just simple. That's just simple stuff, though.
Like hearing you say, like you want to be able to hear like a guitar and singing, be able to put a whole symphony around it, and I'm just like, I can't. When we at church are singing, you got to clap. Also, I can't do both.
Yeah,
I have no rhythm. My daughter, though, I have a 20-year-old daughter, and she's been musical her whole life. In high school, she was in select chorus all 4 years. She taught herself piano, taught herself guitar, writes music, and absolutely loves it. I just love listening to music because I have no rhythm. I can't play any instruments.
Well, it takes every kind and every level of person to make music work. If we didn't have an audience, there would be no need for a stage.
You need me there being your fan.
That's right.
So
it's kind of like using the computer today. If I get really technical, I'm going to have to call my grandkids or my son or my daughter, and all of them know more than I do.
And how much of music is now done?
Oh, yes.
Through the computer, or they'll record one little sound on the computer and loop it in there, and I'm like, that's amazing.
I got a new alarm system in my house, and it's taken me about a month and a half to learn all of the things of how I can, on the road, I can see where this door is open. I can be in New York, and I can check on my app in my phone, and I can realize something is wrong in my house, and it's this door. Can you go check it? And it's taken me about a month and a half, but yesterday I got all of those details done. And I was proud of myself because I'd called my son to ask him to help me, but I found out the answers by just hunting and pecking until I found the right answers myself, and I was kind of proud of myself.
So you go to college, you finish college, and what do you do? Are you moving to Nashville then, trying to...
Well, I worked for the radio station full-time there for a few months. And the bass singer of the Southern Airs that I'd been singing with going through college there for about 5 years had gotten a job with a group called the Prophets Quartet out of Knoxville, Tennessee. And they called me and asked me if I would be interested in coming and singing with them. So I accepted that job in April, on my birthday, actually. April 29th, we had a concert in Paris. After the concert, I had my car loaded, and I followed them all the way to Knoxville, Tennessee. And I sang with them for a year. In the last month of that year, I was approached by the Oak Ridge Boys. We were working in Huntington, West Virginia, and we were putting our sound equipment and our records boxes and stuff underneath the bus. And we were out on the sidewalk. Herman Harper, the bass singer, came up to me and he said, "Would you be interested in coming and singing with the Oak Ridge Boys?" And I said, "I would love to, but I've received my call from Uncle Sam and my number has come up. I've got to go to the Army." I've actually turned in my 2-week notice to the Prophets.
What year is this?
This was in '66.
So you got the height of the Vietnam War going on.
That's right. And so I left. I told them I couldn't take it, but I would be very interested, and that I did think that there was a possibility that I might get out. I've had a heart condition since I probably was born with it, but I knew about it when I was about 3 years old. I was really scared, and my heart started beating extra fast, and that's the first time that we noticed it. But all through school and even till today, I still have paroxysmal tachycardia. There are two names that go in between those two names called AFib today, but the full name is paroxysmal AFib tachycardia. They just say the two middle names today, but I've had that for my entire life. Probably, I noticed it at 3. I passed 2 physicals that the Army required of me. The first one was normal. The second one was a callback because of the heart condition. I passed it too. So I sold everything I had, which wasn't that much, and left the rest at Mom and Dad's house. I got on a Greyhound bus at the Gibraltar Hotel in Paris, Texas, and I rode 130 miles away to Fort Worth, Texas, with all of the other draftees into Uncle Sam's Army. And I was very much in Uncle Sam's Army. And we were getting our directions. And the sergeant told us, there's another sergeant coming up to the stage, and if he calls your name, you do what he says. So that happened. Another sergeant came over. This all took place over a period of time. When he came to the stage, he had a list on a folder, and he called out the names. My last name starts with the A. I was the first name he called. I thought, oh, my Lord, they're going to send me right to the Vietnam right now. And he said, if I call your name, go over and stand by that door that I just came out. And so he called off about 12, 15 names, I guess. And we went inside the office. There were 2 cubicle offices in there, but the other part of the office was kind of a long office with 2 church pews along this way, and it made an L shape. There were probably 12 to 15 people that sat in those chairs. And once again, he went in that little cubicle office, and from there he said, if I call your name, come on in. And he called my name first. So I went in, and he said, is this your heart condition? I said, yes, sir. I've had it since I've known about it. I've known I've had it since I was 3. And he said, well, everybody here is going directly to Fort Polk, Louisiana for basic training, and everybody is going to Vietnam. We need soldiers there right now. So everybody's going there now. And looking at your heart condition, should it go out and you have a situation with your heart and you're on the front line, and we know about it now, you could own the Army and we can't afford you. I said, well, I came here to serve, and I've left my job, and I will do whatever you ask of me to do. I thought they might give me a desk job or something in the States, you know. And he said, no, everybody here is going to Vietnam. We need bodies there. So I said, well, what do I do? He said, we're going to have to reclassify you. You will get a medical discharge. We're going to have to reclassify you from 1A to 1Y, and we will never call you again. And just like that, I was out of the Army. And I said, well, what do I do now? I said, I'm 130 miles away from home. I don't have any money, no car, nothing. He said, you're no longer my responsibility. And I said, well, can I make a phone call? He said, yes. Go to that cubicle right next door. There's nobody in there. And you make one phone call. And I called my banker, and I told him what was going on. And I said, I think I might get a job. I might even get one with the Oak Ridge Boys if they haven't hired anybody. But I've got 2 other offers that I had kind of standing invitations from that I knew about. I said, I really think I can get a job, but I need a car. I'm in Fort Worth. I need a car, and I need to go through to Cunningham, Texas, and say bye to Mom and Dad for a while, and get to Nashville, Tennessee. That's where these jobs are. So he said, go to pick out the car that you want. I said, well, I don't know how to get there. He said, get a taxi and tell him that, tell the car salesman to pay for your taxi when you get there, and you'll buy a car from him. And so I picked out a 1966 Buick Riviera, and he said, write a counter check on it. And I'd bought a couple of cars through him, so my credit was good. And write a counter check on it. When the check comes through, I'll cover it. And you call me when you get a job, we'll work out payments. So that's how I bought my first car.
I don't think you can do that now.
No.
It doesn't work that way.
But that was a country bank, and good relationships all through college. It helped me buy a couple of cars already, and I'd paid them off. And so I got that car, drove through, and said, I'm out of the Army, to Mom and Dad, kissed them, hugged them goodbye for a while. I headed to Nashville. I drove all night long, and I went up to their office, which was in the second floor of RCA building, and their secretary had the phone up to her ear. She said, oh, my God. She put the phone down. She took my hand and escorted me inside the inner office, and there they were. They said, what are you doing here? And I said, I came looking for a job. They said, we thought you were in the Army. I said, I got out. They said, let's go sing. We went over to a Baptist church on Trinity Lane and sang 2 songs. And they came out after about 15 minutes of meeting and offered me a full partnership in the group and publishing companies. Publishing company had 4 songs in it. And we built that publishing company over the years, too. And I've been here, that'll be 60 years ago next month.
And the Oak Ridge Boys, then, they were a purely gospel group. Is that
Right.
right? So you're joining a gospel group, and at that point in your life, had you already accepted Christ as your Savior?
I accepted Christ when I was 12 years old.
So can you tell us about that?
It was the most wonderful experience in my life. I was baptized in the First Baptist Church in Deeport, Texas. We didn't have a baptistry in Cunningham, Texas. It was not that big a church. The only baptizing you got in those country churches was in the creek or in a private pool or in a river, depending where the church might take you. But we had a baptismal service at the First Baptist Church in Deeport, Texas, and all of our church members and the ones who had become Christians all went over there and got baptized.
So 12 years old, you grew up in a family, and it sounds like, Christ was very important in your family.
I learned about Christ, and I was praying at 6 years old to get into a group before I even became a Christian. I mean, I learned about God from birth. In fact, I've always felt like the birth of a child is God's greatest blessing that a family can ever receive. It's up to us what that child learns, because we're the ones who teach them. And I've always felt like I'm a child of God even before I knew that I needed to become a Christian. And I've been directing class singing since I was, I believe 7 was my first time I ever directed a class song. And that's when a traveling singing school teacher came to our school and taught the whole community singing school lessons for 2 weeks. At the end of that 2 weeks, we could get up and direct a song, and I did. I directed Hand in Hand with Jesus, and that's a guy that I got later on in life. I went to Dallas, and I got to study with him, the guy that wrote the song. And he's a guy that taught me a phrase that I've used many times. And we walked on to many stages in our career where stagehands have been treated very poorly by an artist, say, where you work fairs, where one day you got an artist, the next day you got another artist, and some treat them very badly and some are very kind. Well, their reputation is usually nailed to whoever's name is on the marquee. So I told them I don't want those bad words said about the Oak Ridge Boys, so I want you to learn 3 words. You're welcome, thank you, please. And use those 3 words. Of course, you're welcome and thank you are 2 words, but I they actually go together. You're welcome, thank you, please. Use those words a lot and don't criticize anybody because it comes back and they say it's about us.
Right.
Not you, but it'll be about us. And then we don't get booked back.
Yeah.
And they talk about us. So just treat people like you want to be treated and say, you're welcome, thank you, please, a lot.
So you're joining Oak Ridge Boys 1966, and of course, I would say you're now the longest member of the Oak Ridge Boys. When did the other ones that we know about, such as Joe and Richard Sterban and William Lee Golden, when did they start coming along?
William Lee was here before I got here. He actually placed a vote to hire me.
Okay.
And he's been here, he came in 65, a year earlier. When I went to join the Prophets, he was here a year earlier. We both came into the business about the same time. William Lee left for a period of 8 or 9 years and sang with his boys, but he came back, and he's been back with the Oak Ridge Boys now for almost 30 years. I'm not sure of the number exactly, but when he came back, we had the original foursome that was popular in gospel music and crossed over to country music together. A lot of people call that the real Oak Ridge Boys. And I agree with them. We've had different members. Right now, we're working with a new tenor singer. Well, I've actually sung with 3 tenor singers now, and I've sung with 3 bass singers, and I've sung with 2 baritone singers. So, but this is the group, the foursome that had most all of the biggest hits.
Right. At what point, so you're here in 1966, you're an Oak Ridge Boy, but you're single then. When did you meet your wife, Nora?
Oh, I had this dream of meeting a blonde. You know how Texas boys are. I want to meet the blonde. Well, I had a little bit more of qualifications that she had to fit. She had to be able to sing and play the piano. And one day we were in Kentucky, and people started telling me about this young girl. It was the youngest daughter of Noble and Ima Mae Stewart, and that she could really sing. She played the piano, and she was blonde. And so my ears perked up, and I eventually got to meet her, got to hear her sing. And our first date, we did backup singing to one of these New York albums where they do cover albums of somebody else, you know, and the background singers just do oohs and ahs. Mm-hmm. Well, that was my first date with her. We sang together, and we both fell in love pretty fast, I think. And I was married to Nora Lee for 54 years and 8 months, and most beautiful part of my life.
That's great. And I know she passed away in 2024.
On Easter morning, she went to meet Jesus in the air.
It's almost exactly 2 years ago. Then.
Yeah, very close.
And she was a backup singer on the Grand Ole Opry. And I'm just thinking about that, you know, like you and the Oak Ridge Boys, you're doing your songs. Mm-hmm. She's doing other people's songs, being backup every week to the because.
And the third person that was in that backup group was Carol Lee Cooper.
Okay.
Yeah, and Nora Lee wound up singing with her for many years in the Carol Lee Singers, doing backup. And then Carol Lee retired, but Nora Lee kept singing with the Grand Ole Opry backup group. And she sang with them for 42 years. Not counting the times before that she just filled in, she sang as a regular for 42 years.
I would think that would be hard because you're constantly learning new songs.
She had a little room upstairs in our house, not quite as big as the room we're in right here, and her computer and and her tape recorder and record player, whatever she needed to work from, and she would write charts of all the singers that are going to be on the Grand Ole Opry that week. And she would write out charts for the 4 singers, and especially her part. And she might have to do charts for everybody for every song that they would be backing artists. And she not only did that, you might have seen Larry's Country Diner shows and the Country Reunion shows. She wrote charts and did the backup for all of those shows too. And I would hear songs that were going to be recorded all week long. She would be writing charts upstairs. Our houses would be full of music. It still is. My son lives with me now, and he has a recording studio upstairs. So there's music going on in my house constantly, and I love that.
Your son, his name's Dee,
Right.
Is that right? Mm-hmm. And then, of course, going to church here, we know your daughter, Jamie,
Right.
and of course, we had Paul, your son-in-law, on
Right.
as a guest fairly recently, and his episode's been out. And of course, they're in the band Rockland Road.
Right.
What was it like raising a family? You're in the music industry and you're having kids and everything. How was that life like?
Well, when I would get home, no matter what was going on, I tried to be a part of whatever they were doing, like in school activities and so on, in church. No matter what it was at school, I remember going to a parent-teacher meeting one time, and I was the only guy there. And so after the meeting was over, I went up to the lady who was principal of the school, and I said, I was the only guy there. Do guys attend this? I said, back where I was raised, everybody came. Mom and Dad came and supported, everybody in the family came, because we didn't have really sitters or anything out in the country. Your kids came too. They go outside and play, while the meeting was going on. Right. But everybody came. I thought when you said Parents and Teachers Association, that's what it meant. She said, you're the only man that's ever been to any of the meetings. No man ever comes. It's just the women. So I kind of thought that was special, that I would be able to go there and listen and have some input, and I gave them some input. And I always went to the ball games. My daughter was a cheerleader, so I supported all of that. My son had a group early on in high school, and so we fixed a place upstairs where his studio is now, where he could look out, make believe he was on stage with his group that he'd built in high school. And rock and roll music mainly would be coming from upstairs all the rest of the day when they'd get out of school. So there's been music going on up there since we moved. We lived in the same house 46 years.
So, and that's here in Hendersonville.
Right.
And there's so many musicians that have lived here. Like you mentioned, Barry Gibb almost moving here.
Right.
That was because I was actually working for Hendersonville Police at the time, but he had bought Johnny Cash's house, and during the remodel is when it caught on fire.
That's right.
It burnt pretty quick when it caught on fire.
Yeah.
And then you have Marty Stewart that lived right there by him, and so many others, and that still live here. You still have people moving here and everything.
Still a great place to live, and you can run into artists here at Publix or Kroger or one of your favorite places to eat. You can run into them at church.
Yeah.
And we had a big sing-along the other night on Sunday night, and I saw just a lot of artists that attended that, and others that want to come to the next one. Right. So we have a wonderful work here in Hendersonville, and it's just a great community. When I moved here in 1966, there were less than 500 people here.
I think it was a brand new city. I think it became an actual incorporated city around 65 or something like that.
Yeah, it was a little. It was in that formation stage, and there were 2 red lights in the city. Remember that? And I got a ticket for speeding just after I passed the barbecue place on Center Point Road, and both days I came out to rehearse, I didn't get it down enough, and I got a speeding ticket. The first 2 days I came out to Hendersonville to rehearse, because the first week or two I got a motel room to live in Madison, and I would come out here to rehearse. And that's the last tickets I have gotten. That was 60 years ago. Knock on wood here. Maybe that won't change.
We hope that doesn't change.
But it's a wonderful place. We probably have, I would guess we probably have 80,000 people here in this town, because right now we can't go south because there's a beautiful lake on the southern side. On the eastern side, we have Gallatin, and on the western side, we have Goodlettsville, so it can only move north, and we are moving north. And that's the side I live on, which was in the country when I bought that house.
This changed so much. I mean, this in the past, 25 years, there's been some changes. But then you go back to 1966, it doesn't even look like the same place.
It's a beautiful little town around the lake, and we have just about everything here that you would want in a big city, but it's still a little city.
It is.
And there's a lot of charm in this little city. Has lots of churches, lots of schools. We have several clinic-type places if you get sick. And we have one big hospital here in Hendersonville that does major surgeries. We have all kinds of charity-type organizations. I remember probably 30 years ago, I guess, for about 5 years, I headed the United Way, and we worked with all the charity work people in the county and helped build that up a little bit. And we've been involved. I remember several years ago, we would have our fan club parties here. For about 14 straight years, we played softball against the police department and the fire department.
Was that in the Twitty Classic?
Well, we didn't play in that. We just had our own game.
Okay.
It was just a challenge that we made to the police and fire department, and they started bringing in sluggers, so we started bringing in some too.
Y'all probably had a better reach to get some.
It was during June, and there were times they were on strike.
Yeah.
So we brought in some heavy hitters, like Doug Flynn of the Cincinnati Reds came in and played for us, and we would have fun. They won 7 games. We won 7 games. And we thought, this is the time to quit.
Yeah. Were you involved with the Nashville Sounds at all?
Richard was.
Okay, I knew Richard was because when they were still at Greer Stadium, would go games out there. It seems like he was always there.
Richard was part owner in that first owners group that brought the Sounds to Nashville in the beginning. And he's still kind of like a PR guy with the Nashville Sounds. He has seats there, and he goes to most of their games when they're home.
Yeah, when you talked about your growing up and how important it was that Christ was involved, how was that for you and Nora and raising your family to make sure that you presented that to your children?
It's always part of our daily life. I mean, we just raised our kids to know about God and His Son, Jesus. And we raised them to know that sooner or later they would have to make their own decision in that department. Along the way, before Brother Bruce came, my wife came to me and said, when I was younger, I made my decision for Christ. But my family were all Methodist, and I got sprinkled. And my grandson is wanting to be baptized. He's just accepted Christ. And I know you are moving your letter from Texas, and I want to be baptized. And I said, well, I brought her in, and we met with Brother Glenn before Brother Bruce. Mm-hmm. And Brother Glenn looked at her and he said, Nora Lee, you don't have to be baptized this way unless you want to, because I recognize how you've been baptized in the Methodist Church, and I recognize that, and I feel God does too. she said, I want to be baptized with my family. And Paul had been saved but never baptized. He wanted to be baptized. So we went through my whole family there. And all of my family, my son doesn't belong here, but he goes to another Baptist church. But all of Paul's family wound up becoming Christians, and I saw them all baptized, all here in the baptistry, every one of them. So it's just something that Norlie and I taught in our family, and it's something that was a part of our daily teachings, and we would have prayer on the staircase every night before the kids would go to bed. And we'd pray for all of the things that we needed, and we would be thankful for all of the things that God had provided for us. Those two things were always a part of our prayer. And maybe not in that order. But the kids were raised the same way that I was and Norlie was. We were raised knowing about God and knowing that at a certain time, depending on our own belief system, we would have an opportunity to accept Jesus Christ as a personal Savior. I'm a John 3:16 Bible-believing Christian, born again. And that's a summary of my Christian belief.
That's great.
I don't get much more complicated than that.
There's no need to complicate that.
That's the truth that I believe, and I can add a little more, except you have the faith as that of a little child. Ye shall in no wise enter into the kingdom of God. I believe that I'm supposed to accept and believe the virgin birth from Mary that gave us Jesus Christ. Now, there had probably been more virgin births on earth before Jesus. Maybe not in that way, but he was buried and he rose again, and he's the only one that was. And he's the only person that ever walked this earth that reversed time. We counted down to Jesus' birth. When he was born, we started adding time positively. It was negative until Jesus was born. Even time marks Jesus' time on earth as positive. How could you look at anything else and not believe?
Yeah.
I have no questions about my faith. None at all. I just hope that I have done enough when God sees time that it's my time to go, that I've done enough that I can deserve being one of his children that are accepted into the kingdom of God. And I believe that I will be if the Bible that I read is true, because that's what I try to live by. And it's full of places where people make mistakes, and I'm full of them myself. I've made them, but it's a difference if you just stop there, because Jesus died on the cross for our mistakes. But we learn from that, and I learned from my mistakes. If you keep on doing them, that's one thing. But if you learn from them and turn from them, then you've learned something and you've grown. And I feel like in life, I'm going to be 83 next month. I'm still learning. And I learn every day. I learn something new every day. And I hope I never quit.
How does it make you feel knowing that you've raised a family, that they've accepted Christ, and now you see, I know here we see your daughter, your son-in-law, and your grandkids pretty regularly, in the 11 o'clock service, and they're up there praising Jesus and helping lead others. How does that make you feel as you look back at, how you and your wife raised them?
Well, the first concert that they did for people was for me and my wife in our den. And that came about by them all showing up one day and say, "Granddad, we want to do a concert." I said, well, okay, where are we going? They said, "Let's go in here in the den." And just with guitars and singing, they put me on a concert. It's probably a good hour long, maybe longer. They sang everything in the world, every kind of song you could imagine. And I didn't even know they could harmonize. Nobody had told me. But they had been working, and it started out with Jamie and Paul just singing duets, and the kids would walk through the room and start singing a third part. Another kid would walk in the room, start singing another harmony part. First thing you know, all of them, they heard from, like I did, from birth. They started hearing those parts, and they might not have known what they were singing, but they could hear the parts, and they all became a part of that family sound. And it was an awesome feeling sitting in my den and having that first concert performed for me and Orly right there in our own home. And they just gathered around on footstools and chairs around us and just put on a concert. And then I was sitting in the same couch, and I was on my phone and watching what was posted on Facebook. And all at once, they had just done a show somewhere, and I believe it was Jamie that said, "Here's a brand new one that we've never done. In fact, March is playing the piano, and Texas is singing it, and we don't have background voices or any of the other instruments ready yet." And Texas started singing "Take Me to the King," and big old tears just started rolling down my cheeks. And I couldn't quit. I can't hardly even talk about it right now. But to myself, I just said, "God, if this is a sign that you're telling me, well done, I get the message. Because this is my granddaughter, and listen to the lyrics of what she's singing." I feel like all those sessions we had with our kids, they're now passing along to their kids. Isn't that what we're supposed to do? And with that, I felt a very peaceful feeling come over me. And my kids have been a very big blessing to me. After losing Nora Lee about 2 years ago on Easter morning, they have been my biggest strength. My children, Dee included, they've been there. Jason and Amy, who music in the music department here in the church, they brought me over some chicken and dumplings a couple of days ago. Last night, Jamie had been over to help clean up the house a little bit. She got almost through. I said, "When you get through with this room, come on in the kitchen, I'll have you something to eat." We sat down and ate some of Amy's chicken and dumplings and green beans, green peas. And it was such a wonderful feeling because we had a connection there with Jason and Amy while Jamie and I sat there and ate. And Jason and Amy do that occasionally. Just out of nowhere, they just bring me some good home-cooked food. And that's the way this church is.
That's what I've told people. This is a big church.
Yeah.
But when you go here, it doesn't feel like it.
No, it's...
Even for me, I'm not a singer. I've never been a celebrity or anything, but my wife had some significant health problems, and still, even though that was back in August, I refer to them as the Bruces. They're still always checking on her, and I'm like, it's amazing to me that every single person in this church matters, and even though it's a big church, everybody matters, and you're made to feel that way. It doesn't feel like you're walking into a church with a few thousand people. It feels like, I grew up in a small church. I remember the first time the attendance thing up in the front hit 100.
Yeah.
And it feels like that, where you still, have that personal connection with, not just the pastoral staff and everything, but the different people in the church.
One of the things I did for about a year and a half was I directed the music at a church in Paris, Texas. We had 34 people in the church the first Sunday that I went there, and they had no bookkeeping system. They had no record of anything that had ever been done. So I set them up a bookkeeping system, set them up a tithing system, and put the preacher on salary. We started building the choir, and we had duets, trios, and quartets and stuff that we started forming. And 2 years later, when I left that church and joined the Prophets Quartet, we had 200 people in the choir, just the choir.
That is a big choir.
Yeah, and they all came in singing "It's a Highway to Heaven" behind the choir loft. They came in from the back room singing "It's a Highway to Heaven." And I've got a mental picture of it today, and that kind of was my going away present to say, job well done. I feel like God has given me signs all through my life that the path that I have chosen has been an answer to me praying for divine guidance the whole time, because I do that before I do anything. I pray for divine guidance, and then, quite honestly, I get out of God's way, because many times we pray for divine guidance, but then we try to help God make the decision. Well, I think God knows what's best for us. It's better to just kind of open up a little bit and figure out what his decision is and follow that. And sometimes that's different than the way we thought it to be.
Sometimes we don't want to listen to the Holy Spirit telling us what to do because we think we know better.
That's right.
And we really don't. We need to listen a little better. I got to ask you a question about Paris, Texas, because we brought it up a little bit. Now, Paris, Tennessee has an Eiffel Tower, and I'm pretty sure Paris, Texas has one, but doesn't it have a cowboy hat on top of it?
It does have a cowboy hat, right.
So I want to get back to your time in the Oak Ridge Boys a little bit. So at one point, y'all decide, hey, we're not going to just be gospel. We're gonna. I get what would you call it? A crossover, or you're going to
spill over, whatever. Yeah, whatever.
I guess you go into country music, or is it more?
We actually tried our best to pick some songs that were not necessarily country, but had an appeal that could cross. Like, come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody get together. That song was a hit in pop music, and we tried to find some songs like that. We had a song called Talk About the Good Times. Well, we won a Grammy with it, but it was in gospel music. It wouldn't cross. But we thought that maybe we could get a song like that would cross, and we could keep singing gospel music. But the country music people would listen to a single, they say, we like it, but the album is all gospel. They wouldn't take us seriously. So I called Governor Jimmy Davis, and he was a good friend of mine. And I had called for his counsel on other occasions. Jimmy had had hits with Supper Time and many more songs, but he also had You Are My Sunshine. He was the only person that I knew personally that had had hits in gospel music and country music. And I knew he would be honest with me. So I called him up and I said, Governor, we are trying our best to get hits to country radio, but they won't take us seriously. He said, cut a country song. He said, the songs that you're cutting are just country light. They're gospel light. They're not heavy anything. They're just out there in the middle, and that's the reason that they're not taking you seriously. So cut something that the very title of it, they can tell you're serious. You want a country hit. So we found a song called the Y'all Come Back Saloon, and the very title of that.
That sounds country.
Yeah, that sounds country. And I said, well, what happens if it doesn't hit? He said, you know how that feels right now. I said, well, what happens if it hits? He said, they'll all want to claim you. And that happened. We got up to the top 10, but we needed to move on up. We had 3 stations in the United States, four. 4 stations in the United States that were not playing us. One was in Chicago, and we wrote, back then we mailed out fan club things. So we mailed everybody a bulletin fan club thing. We had a big fan club. We asked them to call radio station. We got specific. We need to call these stations. Back then, radio stations would take calls. Called this radio station in Chicago, and they went on it the next day. The next day, the station in New York, they had a full-time country station at that time in New York City. They saw that Chicago went on it. Well, they'd been getting some mail too, so they went on it the next day. Coyote McLeod in Louisville, Kentucky, he saw that New York and Chicago went on it. He went on it the next day. Well, in 3 days, our fan club punched up all 3 of those stations we needed. Knoxville, Tennessee never did go on it. Now, they've played a bunch of our records since then, but the first one, they say they're gospel. They're going to always say gospel. We're not going to play them. Well, that's okay. We made it without them. But it was, we never did get them on the first record. They later played most all of our records. But that week was really important, and we got up to number 2, and there was a group from right here in Hendersonville called the Kindles, and they had a song called Heaven is Just a Sin Away, and it stayed right in number 1 there and wouldn't move, and we got to number 2, and we couldn't bump them out. But in most areas all around the United States, it was number 1. We just didn't time it well enough to get it there all at the same time. Because that was our first record. We didn't have a promotion team that was our team that...
Y'all were the promotion team.
Yeah. We didn't have that. We just had to go with what they had at the record label. And we later supplemented that and got better on our timing. But it stayed there long enough. It was a hit everywhere. It was a career record. It broke our career. And then after that, every album right up till Elvira went gold. And we had about 13 hits right before Elvira. And we paid off a bunch of bills before Elvira. And then Elvira hit and bought us all a new home. And those songs are really important to us because they do more for an artist's career than anything else. Is a piece of magic. 3 minutes.
Yeah, I guess Elvira is probably the song the Oak Ridge Boys are the most known for, and it's so catchy. I mean, I like it. I told you earlier, I go, well, I like it, but I don't know that's my favorite, but I don't turn it off when it comes on either. I think the old Mbapa Mau Mau just gets everybody when that part hits.
I think it's such a different feel and so catchy.
I was happy. I mean, it just kind of.
I look at that song, and we have one other as blessings from God. Thank God for kids. We have a lot of special needs people come to our shows, all ages, from birth up until we have one person that I know of in particular that at 6 months old, they couldn't hardly get him to respond to anything. And his mother played the radio for him, trying to get him to respond to any kind of music, and Elvira came on. This was in 1981. And he started to respond at 6 months old, very, very medically challenged, but he responded. And from that moment on, if they wanted him to do anything, eat, turn on the lights in the room, change his bed sheets, whatever, up until that was 81, so he's 45 or half right now, and he's in a home in Indiana, and I've got a full file on him. To this day, if they want him to eat or brush his teeth or change his bed sheets or turn on the lights or anything, you got to play Elvira for him.
That's amazing. Do you have a favorite song out of that you like to perform?
I like songs that touch people, and they first have to touch me. I sang for years a song that was a #1 country song. Right after Elvira, we did, from the same album, we released a song called Fancy Free. For many years, I had been singing that song and thinking of the writer's mother because that's who it was written about. But shortly after my wife died, the first thing I wanted to do after the last day, that we had 2 funerals, one here and one in Kentucky. And my daughter asked me what I wanted to do, and I said, I'd like to go home and take a shower and put on some running clothes and go to the bus because we got a date in Florida, and I want to go sing. I need to go sing. Music is healing to me. It's always been that way, and I need to get what's on inside of me. I need to get it out in music because I've cried as much as I can. I've heard people saying I'm sorry as much as I can take anymore because it all puts me in that mood, and I need to share this. I need to get it out. Well, our road manager came with a program, and he showed me all the songs. He said, "Can you do all these?" And I said, well, let's leave out Amazing Grace because just a few days before, Norlie was having a rough day, and she was shaking, and we called for the nurse to come, and she came in and took hold of her and started singing Amazing Grace. Well, I started singing a harmony, and Jamie was actually laying in bed with her trying to calm her down, and she started singing a third part. In the second verse, she started calming down a little bit. We started singing the third verse, and Norlie started trying with the pipes and tubes in her mouth and nose and stuff. She started singing some harmony parts with us, just trying to sing along. And by the end of the third verse, she'd quit shaking, and she quietly shut her eyes and just kind of went off to sleep. And this was the day before she passed. And I said, I don't think I can do that. I've not told anybody about that, so not been able to really. But I said, I don't think I can do Amazing Grace. Later, we were asked to sing that at Bush Library event, so we had to get on the bus and sing it a few times to get me through it, but we were able to do it. And then I got to a song, I said, that's the only one I'd rather not do right now. And so we took that off the show. And I had forgotten about Fancy Free second verse. And the second verse goes, oh, Lord, you just don't know how hard it is to say goodbye. She did her best to stay. God knows how hard she tried. Well, boy, that last day of me being with her for 13 straight weeks, that just came very real to me. And I started breaking up. My lips started quivering and tears started rolling. And Ben came over and put his hand on my shoulder, and he sings a harmony with me on that last half of that verse. So he helped me through it. And the people started standing. Well, we hadn't mentioned anything about sickness or death or anything to the audience, but they picked up on it and they started standing. And by the end of that song, they were cheering, and they stood for probably 5 minutes. They didn't stop. And it was just so awesome in support, and we didn't say a word. They picked up on all of it. And since that time, that song has had a very special place of meaning, and it's got to me a few times since that, but I've always been able to get through it because I've got help. And that's a good thing about being in a group. You've got other guys there that take your back if you need some help. And in the work that you do, you know how important that is.
You know, you were in the Oak Ridge Boys in '66, and then you get, I guess, your core group, and we've lost Joe now. Mm-hmm. Did you ever imagine, because most groups don't last that long together, was that, looking back at it, it's like, wow, we did something that's not normal?
Well, in the last years of my college, I was studying the business that I hoped to get into, country and gospel. And I noticed one thing that kind of got my attention. Not a lot of the acts were lasting that long. And I thought, well, I better get me a teacher's certificate. And there might be a small college somewhere that needs somebody that can play some pretty rough basketball and shoot the three, even though it wasn't in then. But I can shoot, and I could teach music, and I bet they don't have a combination of those two very often.
No.
Maybe I could coach in some small college and teach some music, and I would enjoy myself because I love both of those. So I went to school an extra semester, graduated in January, and got my teacher's certificate. I taught for a semester. And so I'm a qualified teacher because I just did that for insurance. I thought that it might not last that long, but now that I'm about to complete 60 years here and one other year with the Prophets, I've been singing professionally now for 61 years, so I think it's going to last.
It's still touring.
Yeah, and I'm still touring. And I just booked the Strawberry Festival in Florida next year. So,
yeah, I think about I don't go to a lot of concerts. I just, I'm not big about being around the crowds. But I told you before we started recording that I would go to y'all's Christmas shows. That's right. What our family would do on Christmas Day in the evening, which, I think about that now. Of course, it was at Opryland Hotel, so y'all all lived in the Hendersonville area, so You're still kind of home. But that's what we would do for Christmas Day, and I don't know how many years y'all did that, but we went quite a few years.
3 years.
I think we went all 3 years then. You could not go to that show and not have a good time. And I think about the other concert. I went to a Jimmy Buffett concert, didn't really want to go. We had tickets. Somebody we knew, their father was a steel guitar player in his band, so we had good tickets, and I'm like, I don't really want to go. We go, you couldn't go to a Jimmy Buffett concert and not have a good time. Oh, yeah. They're just fun. But I felt that it was, of course, a different type of concert, but you couldn't go to that and not. It was just such a good time, enjoyable. Y'all were up there, telling stories about the songs and joking and everything, and it was a lot of fun seeing.
I love doing those Christmas shows there at Opryland Hotel. It was a great time.
It looked like they were all sold out too. So that's always nice when you're the performer to go out and see a crowd.
We could go up there and sing for about an hour and 15 minutes and come home and put our shoes under our own bed. That's quite
not having to sleep on the tour bus.
Yeah, I loved it.
What kind of, you're going through your music career, you're touring a lot, especially, you're still touring. I guess really the height of having the hits was, the 80s, 90s, that time frame. Was there ever any struggles while you were touring that you had to face and had to really rely on your faith while you're out there touring and keep you on the right path?
Well, there have been many of those. Back during the time when we were our hottest, the biggest money, it seemed, was in the cigarette tours. They put a lot of money into the tour itself, paid the acts a lot of money, and they usually contributed quite a bit of money to the artist's favorite charity. We got endorsements and opportunities to work the cigarette tour. That didn't work out. We also got opportunities to be the face of and the group that sang American Made with beer companies, and we turned that down. During the time that the cigarette commercial was offered to us, we were doing commercials for the Ronald McDonald House, and we didn't think that fit our image. In the beer commercial, they actually got 4 guys to walk away from the camera, and there were silhouettes of 4 guys walking around away from the camera that a lot of people think is us. It wasn't. Those were just 4 actors, and they were playing American Made, our record. But that wasn't us, and we didn't get a penny from that, and we turned it down. But I do know that the producer made many millions of dollars with that commercial.
Oh, that's another one of your songs. That's an iconic song. Mm-hmm. You got Elvira, American Made. I think one of my favorite, I love both those. I like Leaving Louisiana and The Broad Daylight.
Right.
That's a great song.
It's a fun song. If you remember the girl, Mary Hartman show, had a Mary Hartman show. Her mother would go around the house singing those phrases, just like, never have a loved one that felt so good. And she just spit them out. Apparently, they were phrases that she heard growing up in Louisiana. And the writer, Rodney Crowell, picked up on that and wrote the song. And that came from Mary Hartman's mother.
Y'all have some good harmony in that song, too.
Yeah, it's a fun song to do. We still do it every night.
Being a musician, I don't know if there's anybody in the music industry that doesn't know who the Oak Ridge Boys are, especially in the Nashville area. And, you have a lot of people in the music industry that they're not following Christ. But I would say everybody knows that you are by the way you live your life. You're not ashamed to talk about it. Have you been able to have an effect on any other artist through how you live your life? When you were touring with multiple artists, did anything that y'all do ever set an example for them?
There have been many opportunities for that to happen, yes. But one just happened just before I came down here. I was reading on my Facebook page, and there was a special message in the messenger section. And this young man was talking about Joe Bonsall. And he said, he led me to Christ. And that was over a Facebook page. And he led him to Christ and taught him the plan of salvation over a social site. I think we have that opportunity with the way we live our lives in our daily life. Instead of going out and preaching on a street corner, I'd rather go out and live on a street corner and them see the way I live my life, not what I say about it. If they see that, then they can approve me for what I really am instead of what I say I am. So that's kind of the way I look at things. I've always felt in my heart that if you read John 3:16, there's a plan there that will get you to heaven. And I make no bones about it that I'm a John 3:16 born-again Christian, and that's the way I live my life. And I want to go to heaven because I feel like that's where all my friends are going. And if none of them make it, I want to be there because I want to be there with God and Jesus Christ.
I think about when you did your crossover, and I've been thinking about this. Did you get any kickback from, your gospel fans? Like, why are you going to this more mainstream? And then just listen to everything going on. I feel like you going to the more mainstream gave you a bigger audience.
We got a lot of kickback, and it got to a point that I blacked it out in my head. And I still listened to gospel music because I loved it, but I didn't pay any attention to who the group was or the artist was because I didn't care. At that point in my life, I just didn't want any kind of baggage on what I was listening to. I just wanted to hear the music. And sometimes there would be baggage that would come with an artist in case that artist had said something about us, and I didn't want that to in any way affect my thinking about the song that I was hearing. And so I had to go through a change myself because I'm a deep lover of the foundation of our music, which is gospel music. A lot of people in country music feel the same way. A lot of people got their pipes from singing in church, and they grew up in church. A lot of people in country music sang gospel music before they ever sang a country song. Practically all of them know how to sing Jesus Loves Me. Every one of them, I would say. But along the way, I kept hearing, I can forgive you, but I can never forget. And I said, there's got to be another way to look at that. And I started developing something that I call my forgiveness theory. I build business models on everything that we do. They're 3 steps, not 4, just 3 steps. And every one of the business models, be it how do you make it, how do you set up the dinner for us when we go into another town, we got people that don't like meat, you got people, how do you set that up? Well, it's all in the business model. It's all in a computer, and you can punch a button and get it. Well, what is the forgiveness theory about? If somebody has done me wrong, I don't want to have that burden me down. I want to get it off of my shoulders. So how do I do that? Other than calling a confrontation, how do I get it off my shoulders? Well, I have to forgive that person, and I have to ask God to help me forgive that person and ask God to forgive me and that person. That's number one. And then I have to ask God to forgive that person, whether he wants to be forgiven or not. I ask God, that's number 2. I ask God to forgive that person who may have caused harm or tried to me, bad-mouthed me, whatever. And I have to forgive that person too. And then number 3 brings it all home. In the Bible, it tells me that makes a place for love to bloom again. Well, okay. that just got it off my shoulders. I just forgave them. And so I got to where when someone would come up to me and say, did you hear what somebody said about so-and-so? What do you think about that? Well, my answer was real short. I don't think about it at all. I don't even have an opinion on it. It don't make any difference, you know. And those people that badmouthed us pretty soon started calling us for tickets. And they would want, one of them took a whole church out to our show in Charleston, West Virginia one night. And the main thing they wanted to do is come to see us before the show. And we gave them all that group backstage passes. We took pictures with them. There was not ever one word said about the words they had spoken about us. Never. We took pictures, and they did exactly what Governor Jimmy Davis told me they would do. They acted like we've been best of friends forever. They wanted to claim us as their boys.
That's great. Oh, did that take time for you to get to that place in your life where you're able to do that? Wasn't something when you're 25 years old you're able to do that?
I had to black it out first, but I realized I was blacking out a whole area of music that I loved. And some of the people in it I loved too. You know, there are people in there like Bill Gaither who never, ever turned his back on me. He stayed a friend of mine from the first time I met him. And we forever, and we still talk. I talked to him 2 days ago for about an hour. And he's 90 years old. I don't have many people that old that are still with us anymore.
Yeah.
I don't have that many people to talk to. But he can talk with me about just about everything that I know about gospel or country or any other kind of music, or the Indiana Pacers basketball team. And I know them too. So we've been friends for a long time, and there are several people in gospel music. I usually mentor 12 to 15 people around the year. At any one time, there might be more than that. Sometimes it's less. But a lot of those are young gospel singers, and they want advice. And I try to point out the pitfalls and tell them the things that you don't want to do. And anytime I tell them something that they don't want to do, I try to fill that gap with something they need to do. I don't just give them a don't. I give them a what you can do. And I try to point them in a straight and narrow path that will lead them to what their success might be. Not what mine has been, but what theirs would be. And I enjoy passing along what I've learned, and anybody that asks, I try to give them as much time as I can. And I remember when the Nealon's plane went down, and of course Autumn sang here for us a couple of Sundays ago. She was the only one left out of that family, and I mentored Jason with the Nealons for probably 2 or 3 years. They would send me everything they were going to record before they recorded it, and the roughs before they mixed it, and we would talk about it, ask for suggestions. That nearly killed me. There were 6 people in that plane. They all perished, and that just took a big hunk out of me because I'd talked with them so many times. I just loved them. They were like my extended family, like my own grandkids practically. And Rex Nealon, who is Kelly Nealon's father, was a friend of mine who was on the very first professional singing date that I ever worked. He was with a group called the Lefevres, and he welcomed me into the business. He became my very close personal friend, sang bass with the Lefevres. And he started the Nealons. And so his daughter was like another granddaughter to me. And to see Autumn and her family in our church, and hear her sing, hear her testimony, that just takes me home. You know, it's a part of something that I feel like I'm a part of. I don't really mentor her career, but she's getting some really good mentoring from a lot of people, like Gene McDonald. He's really a father figure to she and her husband and that little boy, and they're going to our church now too.
Yeah, and he's saying at Gospelville
right.
also. Yeah, you mentioned so much stuff and I was going to ask you questions about, and you've already answered most of them. One of them I had was, have you mentored someone, and has somebody mentored you, and what impact it had on you? And would you say Bill Gaither has kind of been a mentor to you?
That's right.
And it sounds like maybe your uncle was too.
My uncle was probably my first mentor, and I just lost my coach 2 weeks ago, Buddy Taylor, and he was my coach. He was my other mentor in Texas growing up, and we stayed friends right up until his death a couple of weeks ago. And I've talked to his wife before and after, and he was such a supporter of me. He knew my dreams, and he helped me to dream and always encouraged me. He became actually the superintendent of school after I left, but while I was going there, he was my coach. And he was a great friend. He became a very, very, more than just a friend. He was really a supporter and a mentor to me.
Yeah. And you had those men that poured into you. What have you seen? Now that you're at the stage where you're pouring into these younger people and helping them out, how does that affect you?
I just feel very blessed that I'm still alive and can do something to help somebody else, because it's a great feeling. It's almost like experiencing it again myself. And my phone rings a lot, and I try to be open about every question that I'm asked. And a lot of the times it's not personal problems, it's business problems that I get calls about how to work. Do we form a partnership, or do we form a corporate, or do we do an LLC, or do we make this a totally missionary type work and just go through a church? What do we do? How do we do it? And most of the questions in the beginning are for things like that. Then sometimes it gets into personal spats. I try to stay out of that. I just tell them to face their problems head on and pray for divine guidance before you go into any kind of meeting like that.
Yeah, there's nobody that can look at the Oak Ridge Boys and say, they didn't make it in country music or in music that's in general. Y'all still are a success. What does it mean to make it in the music industry?
There's one weekend that kind of stands out to me, and it started long before that with people asking questions at press conferences like, how do you feel making it in country music? And I started examining those two words, making it. What does that mean? What does it mean when a fan looks at you, and how can I answer it without being braggadocious? Because I've always been taught to never sound braggadocious. No matter what you're telling, just say the truth, and it will come out the truth, and just don't brag about it. So I was speaking at the Chamber of Commerce, and the meeting was being held at the little college that's on...
Was it Welch?
Yes, Welch College. And that's when they had their meetings there. And just before I was introduced to speak to the Chamber of Commerce that morning, one of the persons that was introducing me had a Billboard magazine, and I hadn't seen it because it was a current one. And he got up on stage and he said, I would like to tell you and read off to you who is the number one draw in the United States for the entire last week. And he read off the Oak Ridge Boys, Cleveland, Ohio, the Ohio State Fair. Number 2, Oak Ridge Boys, Cincinnati Zoo, next night. Next night, Indiana State Fair, Oak Ridge Boys. Number 4, Oak Ridge Boys, Kentucky State Fair. We had planned all of those dates like we wanted to plan them out. And if you look at it, they're less than 500 miles apart, easy traveling. It's not long distances. We planned every bit of it long out before. It worked out exactly the way we wanted it. And we came home, and he went on to mention, and they brought home over $500,000. Well, back in the 70s or 80s, that was a lot of money. They're bringing in millions and millions and millions nowadays per night. But back then, that was big. And I didn't know that. He read it off of the billboard that had just come out. And he said, and they bring that here to Hendersonville every week. Well, I got a feeling of what making it means. When you plan something, one, and you get about putting it in place, and then you bring it home. That's your business model for making it. You know, you got to recognize what you want to do first, make a plan of how to go about working to get it exactly like you want it, then bring it home. And if it's successful, then everybody knows it. But what they don't know is all of the planning that went into it to make it a success. Because if you're in Ohio, you just went to that one fair. You don't realize there's 3 more coming up, right. And all of those were planned too. When you look at the big picture, about a year before that, we were planning all of that. That's what I call making it. When you get to do exactly what you want to do, and it's a success.
That's great. You know, I think about the 4 of you and the amount of touring, and I know there's no way y'all did not have arguments because you can't put 4 guys together and you always get along. How did y'all manage that? Because there's times y'all had to have disagreements, but you're able to make it through and to have a lasting, you know, not just a music career, but a relationship where you're very close with those other men.
As we've aged, we've learned what's important, what's not. It's kind of like with a marriage. You live with the same person and you're married to that same person, have so many things that you have in common that you both love about each other. And if you put those in one stack, it usually stacks really high. And that's what you loved about that person that made you want to marry that person. And you got another stack that you can start stacking up. And if you want to, they're little picky things. And you can add them up. And you can make you probably a stack there too. And if you want it to, it can probably get to be pretty high. But you're going to be miserable if you stay in that frame of mind. And you're better off if you just take that stack, however high or low it may be, and just wipe it off the table because it's not important. It may seem important at the time, but it's not really important in the big picture. What's important are the things that you agreed on, that you loved each other about. Those things are things you build on. You deal with the others and then mark them off.
Because you have those things that are annoying to them also.
Yes, sir. We all do. We all do.
You're probably spending, you know, a lot of these times you're spending more time with these guys than you are your own wife and family.
Well, for many years, in the last 2 2 or 3 decades, we worked 150 plus dates a year. That was our minimum that we had to work to make it all work. But the last 2 years, we cut those in half, mainly for Joe, so that Joe could keep working and we could cut down on dates and he could still work with us. And so we worked 75 dates in 24, and in 25 we worked 69, and we're going to be about that in this year. Looks like about that same amount.
How did COVID affect y'all? Because my in-laws live across the street from a newer country musician, and it was something he said, like, he was going to be okay, but it's all the people that depend on him when they're touring that were going to hurt. How did that affect y'all and, the people that are dependent for you to be out touring?
We were able to keep paying everybody in our organization something. Everybody took a cut, but there were people that gave us consideration, like the people that have the lease on our building. They gave us consideration. Like the bus companies, they gave us consideration. Well, I had some property that I was leasing to another bus leasing company. Well, I gave them consideration. So we just passed that along through everybody, and everybody tried to do what you can to help those you work with. And it doesn't stop with us. Everybody had to tighten your belt and put your hand out and try to help other people. And we did that. And we didn't really have anybody that was without some sort of a salary through the whole thing.
That's great. And that was a hard time. It was a hard time for churches.
We didn't lose any employees.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm thankful for that. We have a lot of employees that have been with us 40, 50, 55 years.
Yeah. One of the things I usually ask is, how can men display Christian leadership? And I feel like you answered that, gave part of an answer to that earlier when you were talking about, when we go in somewhere, we're going to use please, we're going to say thank you, and we're going to say you're welcome.
Right.
And, sometimes it's just that kind of stuff on how you live. Like Chick-fil-A is, everybody knows they're going to say my pleasure if you say so. And it's, how you're treated when you go somewhere.
That's right.
Is there anything else on how you can men can display Christian leadership you'd like to add on? Because you're a leader. You do a lot. You're helping these other artists now, people that come to you, and you're leading them to try to do things the correct way.
When 9/11 hit, we had a booked date the next day to go to Branson, Missouri. And our manager, Jim Halsey, lives in Mounds, Oklahoma, which is a small suburb of Tulsa. And he drove over. And before we went out on stage, we got in a circle and we all had prayer. On every major occasion, we've done that. And asked God to help us get through what would be a very challenging show. And as a result of that, the people responded in a massive way at the end, well before we even did a song. They were standing. And we've had different occasions where things like that happen, and we needed the audience to come. One time as a gospel group, we sang over in North Carolina. And the last show that we had done over in North Carolina, they went on before us this time and did our last show word for word. Everything. How they introduced the songs, everything. So we're standing backstage. They were our opening act. And everybody was saying, what do we do? What do we do? And I said, we've got a brand new album that nobody's heard. Let's walk out on stage and do the new album. We walked out on the stage, but we had not done one note, and the audience gave us a standing ovation because they had just heard our last show from another group, and they knew it. They knew that that group had just done our show. So then we said, we've got some music that nobody has heard, and we're going to do it all for you right now. And that was a very satisfying feeling in that when we got through, they kept standing, and it was a very good experience.
That's great.
So all through our career, we've had those kind of challenges. When we were in the Soviet Union in the 70s, we went under the cultural exchange program with our government. And that's when the Soviet Union was very deeply behind the Iron Curtain. And we worked in what was then Leningrad and Moscow, but we also got on trains and rode to Riga in the Baltic area. And that's where one of the worst concentration camps of the war was in Riga. We went to that, and that's a whole nother podcast completely. But when we were leaving our show, we would travel to the train or to the hotel in Army buses. And they're like the old school buses we used to travel in, and the windows would open from the top and slip down. You remember that. Well, I was sitting by the window, and this woman was hitting on the window. And so I let the top down, and in came a note, and it went down to the floor and under the seat in front of me. And I just thought she was sending a note, a fan note. It didn't really register that she had sent a note or what it was in it, because I've seen that a lot. But I looked around to look at her and thank her, and she was being dragged off and beaten by SS soldiers, and I don't know what happened to her. But after we got out of the parking lot, somebody asked, "Aren't you going to read that note?" And so then I remembered it had fallen in between my legs and underneath the seat in front, so I reached down and grabbed it. Opened it up, and handwritten on just a piece of paper, it said, "Keep singing about Jesus, because there are people here that believe." That was behind the Iron Curtain. Wow. It just froze me. And I realized that no matter where we go, people pick up on the fact that we sing about Jesus.
Yeah.
And the message gets through. And the Bible tells me that if you speak the word of God, that the message will not go out in vain. And that's why when we get on stage, we sing the messages we want to leave with people. Of course we sing Elvira. That's an entertainment song. It's a fun song. It's a song. God wants us to laugh. He wants us to have fun. I mean, he made all of us a laughing box. He made it where we could all smile. I think God wants us to be happy. He tells us in the Bible that we should be happy. So those songs are for that too, but they're all songs that are scattered throughout our show, every show that we do, where we sing about Jesus. On that particular show, they had asked us to do 3 extra songs. Well, we were doing songs like Daddy sang bass, Mama sang tenor. You know, they would get by with that as an entertainment song.
Yeah.
But there was another song that we thought would go over good there, but I was afraid of the title because they had proofed every word of every lyric of every song we had done months in advance before we ever went over there. They had come to a show in Pittsburgh, and we've had to furnish lyrics of everything. So they called me into a meeting. We had this one song we wanted to do, and we had to get proof of it. So one stood out. So went into this room with a bunch of their Secret Service people in there. They were proofing everything. And they said, this one song, we're not sure about it. And we're not sure about Canaan land. What is Canaan land? Well, that's a secondary title of Where the Soul of Man Never Dies. But I didn't think that I could get through Where the Soul of Man Never Dies through the clearance. So I called it Canaan land. They said, what's this Canaan land? And I said, well, that's a place, a good place where you go when you die. And they said, well, it's not in our dictionary. So you can't sing to Canaan land, so we suggest you sing to Disneyland. And I said, well, sir, that's not really appropriate because that's like a fun place where you go with rides and things. This is more like a place you go after you die. And so I said, how about we use to that fair land? And I got that through. But we had to jump a lot of hoops to sing about the Lord, and all the rest of the song stayed. But that's how we got through it. We just had to adapt.
Yeah, I think that's so key for people to understand. Even though y'all made that switch from gospel to the, I guess we could say mainstream, that you still maintained your gospel roots and sharing about Jesus when you are when you go out, you perform Elvira, American Made, and all these other songs that were hits for you, but you're also performing to glorify Jesus.
And Roy Clark was on that tour. He wanted to have a little talk with Jesus Makes It Right. So everywhere we would go, if he saw a piano in a hotel, he'd say, let's go to that piano right now. Let's have a little talk. He wanted to sing it everywhere. It's a wonder we weren't put up in a gulag somewhere for the rest of our lives.
Yeah. You know, you've had a long music career. What has been the biggest change you have seen in the music industry over your time?
I think probably the biggest change that everybody will recognize is the computer, the way we listen to music from analog to digital.
Yeah.
And that was brought about mainly by the computer. And those
There's much easier access to a wider variety of artists than there used to be.
You can actually mix a song on your computer. I mean, there's GarageBand is an app that I have on my computer.
I have it on my phone. I don't know how to use it, but it's there.
I've never used it either. Well, I have a little bit, but I don't use it professionally. I use it to play with. But music has come a long way, and in the way that you retell it, because we're one of the few acts that makes albums anymore. Nowadays, it's completely different in the way you push a song. Used to, we would put out an album a year, and there would usually be about 3 singles off of it. Mm-hmm. We had 5 singles off of our last album before the album was ever released.
Through the digital?
Yeah, and they were done every 3 weeks. They'd have another one.
Yeah.
And they built up, the download. Just build up shares and downloads.
Yeah. Do you think it's easier now for younger artists to get noticed than what it used to be?
Well, for sure it is if they know how to work the computers and the
social media.
Social media. There are acts that now do not have a radio hit, but have become huge over the internet. And my grandson has started making some real silly type things, and he was telling me about going out to eat with his parents downtown, and these girls were all over talking and everything, and a few minutes later they came out and said, "Are you Kel Allen? Are you the guy on the television?" And they started screaming and everything, Well, he's right here, He goes to church right here. And but he's building an audience of young people who love what he does, and they're everywhere.
I showed you this picture earlier from the one from your the Greatest Hits album. And everybody looks like they're actually laughing and having a good time in it. And some of the laughing, you can't really fake that. What is going on here? What is old Joe doing right there? Because it looks like he's really catching y'all's attention.
He was, and I was pulling on his tie, like I was about to hang him. And we always had a good time. The four of us, we wasted no time really waiting to have a good time. We started out having a good time.
That's great.
And we had a few years where some of our dreams of where we were going got in different directions. We had to adjust that, and when the four of us got back together, it's been wonderful ever since the four of us got back together. You very seldom ever hear a crossword among anybody in our whole organization. We're having more fun now than we ever have had, but we have to deal with the two things that you have to deal with as you get older, and that's sickness and death.
Yeah.
And that's not fun. It's just that I hope that when people see us deal with it, they understand that we're human too, and we're trying to deal with it with as much class as we can, because I know they're going through it too.
Right.
And if they know that we're dealing with it and trying to get through it as best we can, maybe they can see something that will help them. And maybe we can also see something in them that helps us.
Yeah, you've mentioned a few times about John 3:16, and I ask everybody, unless I forget, do you have a favorite passage from the Bible? And if so, is that one yours, or is
that's mine?
You can't really get much better than that.
That's the foundation of my faith, and there are scholars that will get into the details of the Bible, and you can prove about anything that you want to prove if you've got a good reference with your Bible and a good reference chain to go with it. There's no need for that with me. I don't make God complicated. I make him welcome. And to me, that's very simple. God is not someone I go to see at church. I take God with me everywhere I go. He's with me when I go to bed at night. He's with me when I get up in the morning, when I feed my dogs. If one of my dogs wants to get in the house and I don't want him to, I've got to be careful, because I don't want to hit him and hurt him, because I'm not that kind of person. I want to give him a command and get him out of the way so that he doesn't really do something he's not supposed to. But I don't kick him and I don't beat on him. And I'm not that type of a character. I think anybody that kicks a dog is going to get bitten by that same dog later on. So you need to be careful how you kick around people or your dogs. You need to treat humans the same way.
Is there before we get ready to close out, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners? I'd
just like to thank them for being wonderful fans and supporting the Oak Ridge Boys all these years. I'm about to finish my 60th year here, and I'm starting my 61st. I'm not going anywhere. And I'm looking forward to next year. We're going to have a new album out this fall. It's already finished. And we're deciding on the cover right now. That's already been taken as well. And we're still singing. I opened up my book this morning, and over the weekend, the agency had put 5 new dates in our date book. And I just felt like I was 23 again. You know, all at once, just seeing new dates in our book, it just ignites that old fire in me. And I'm not 23 anymore, and I know it. But I have that fire in me. That's that little boy that people want to come see. And I think that's the same way that ball players feel. Like you watch a professional baseball player, he's out doing what that little boy in me wishes he could do, you know. And I feel the same way about when someone comes to see us. They'd love to be able to do what we're doing. Some of them would, some of them don't. Some of them want to be right where they are, and that's fine too. But I like that little boy approach because I think if you get it more complicated than that, you can get it all bruised up. And I like to keep the love that I have for my music and my God and my family and my fans. I like to keep it really simple, on the very simple John 3:16 kind of approach, because that's the kind of person I am. I'm not really complicated either, but I do a lot of complicated things. I might approach 25 subjects running the Oak Ridge Boys before this day's up.
I just want to thank you for being here with us. It's been great talking to you and so insightful to everything that goes on, not just with you, but the music industry itself. And it's much more involved than just singing a song and what you have to do to make everything work and keep everything going.
Well, it's something I love to do. I was talking with someone on a business social site today, and she said, "How much do you work?" And I said, "I work 24/7. She said, "Don't you get tired?" I said, "Well, sleeping is figured into a 24/7 day. That's a natural part. But if somebody goes to a hospital, they're going to call me probably first. And I'm the closest to the hospital here in town. I'll be there in 5 minutes, and they know it. So I'm 24/7 on all my people, and they know it. And it might not be that I'm working all that time, but I'm on call all that time. And so my heart is sold out to what I do, and that includes the divine guidance of God Almighty, because I pray for divine guidance all the time. And God hears me when I say that. So he knows that doing this podcast with you is very important to me. And it's important to me that people who hear it know that I pray for divine guidance. It's not that we just go out there and slap a show together. It's a lot more involved in that. And God, I need God's guidance, because you can't do it just by yourself.
Well, I'm going to say a prayer for us, and
thank you.
We will be done. God, I just want to thank you for, letting Duane be here. His humbleness, being the man that he is, the success that he has, and still being humble to come spend the time with us and just tell us a story. The fact that he still puts Christ first, that he uses these other songs that are popular songs like Elvira or American Made, and he uses those to be able to get the songs to sing about you and glorify you, to reach people for Christ, and how great that is that he's able to use that tool and the influence he has to reach people that, others would not be able to. I pray that he can keep doing that as he's still touring, after 60 years and still out there touring, talking about Jesus with people that he comes across and displaying the leadership that a Christian man needs to do. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Path, a podcast production of the men's ministry of First Baptist Church in Hendersonville, Tennessee. For more information, or if you have questions, please visit our website at FBCHville.com. That's FBCHville.com.